Good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of the Financial Armor Show. My name is Brad Cooper, and I'm your host. And I want to introduce my wonderful, amazing co-host, Tony Shore. How are you doing today, Tony?
I am doing great, Brad. Great to be here with you. Thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate it because, number one, I learn something every week on the show with you. I always learn something from you, and we have fun, and I enjoy talking with you. We were talking about Valentine's Day. We're actually recording this show on Valentine's
Right.
Day for this weekend. So that should be fun. And you were talking about how you and your wife celebrated an evening early. You celebrated last night, didn't you?
Yeah, that's right. We had a nice celebration, nice dinner, and
Yeah.
what was great about it, Tony, was we didn't have to wait for an hour to
Yes.
eat. We
Yeah,
got there
that's nice.
right at the perfect time. When we left, we were walking out and I counted 25 people waiting for a table.
Wow. Wow.
So, but it was nice and enjoyable
Sure.
and like we were talking, earlier, just not only about money and finance, we we go much deeper with, our clients, which really I just had this conversation a few days ago about what makes our firm different than most? Because I had a
Hmm.
new appointment say, Brad, I've worked with several different investment firms throughout my career. What makes you different? And I really summed it up in just a couple things, but the primary was we're a relationship type firm. If you're looking for someone that will educate, offer holistic financial planning, but also relationship, that's who we are and that's what we love because other than money, there's a lot more important things in life as well. Health, a lot of
Yes.
our clients and uh, have lots of money, but what good is having millions and millions of dollars if you don't have your health?
Yeah.
So
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. You have to have your health, and healthcare is such a big part of financial planning too, because of the cost of healthcare. I mean, it all ties in, doesn't it?
absolutely, Tony. We were talking about this earlier, just healthcare in general. And if you looked at the top three worries or concerns that most retirees and pre retirees also have today, healthcare, unexpected healthcare costs, long-term
Yeah.
care is in the top 3, and that's a big
Wow.
part of our discussion. And as I'm approaching retirement, which I'll probably never retire because this isn't work. I get to hang out with
Right.
you on a
Yeah.
weekly basis and
Same. As long
visit.
as my voice holds out, I'm here.
Yes.
Yeah.
But life happens and
True.
we get very personal with our clients, just what we were talking about before. My wife has been going through dialysis for a couple years now.
Yeah.
And on the transplant list, God willing, hopefully in the next 60 days, she'll get a new kidney. And what's fun or very touching more so than anything is when I'm having meetings with clients, and that's a big part of our conversation. How's Shelly doing? How are you doing? And then I follow up with some great news about how their accounts are doing and that they're still on track to never run out of money and
That's
enjoy
good.
retirement. So I catch
That's good.
myself. I did this the other day and I do this daily. Well, what advice would you give us, Brad, for the client reviews? Spend more money, go out and
Huh.
create memories because studies have shown, and I've seen this with my own business the last 10, 15, 20 years, as we age, which we all will, and one of two things will happen. We'll either end up in a nursing home or we'll die.
Yeah.
So as we approach, you know, that older age, we're not going to want to spend as much money. We're not going to want to do the things that maybe you want to do now while you're still healthy and energetic. So go spend your money, go create memories, and enjoy your retirement years.
Yeah, yeah, that great advice, Brad, and I think that's really a great sentiment. And you probably don't expect to hear that from a financial advisor. Go spend your money. Once you hit retirement, then you should go out there. Well, you still have your health in retirement. You have time on
Right.
your side still, and you have your health. Hopefully, you're able to get around at that point when you're retired. when you're first retired. But as you get older, you're going to slow down, and then you're going to have your slow go years and your no go years. So yeah, spend some money, travel, get the things done you want in those go years when you first retire. That's good advice, but have a plan to make sure you're not going to run out of money. And the way to do that
Exactly.
is Brad Cooper. I'm not going to name names, Brad Cooper, but I know a guy, right?
Yeah, and so true. And on the flip end of that, I share with my clients, if you don't spend it, studies have shown your children will blow through your entire inheritance in the first 18 months or
Yeah.
less, sometimes 12 months or less. So go out and create memories, go out and do things with your family now and spend your money on them as well, would be
Yeah.
my advice
Yeah, and
if
if
you
you
have
don't
the
spend your
resources.
money, your children will, right? And in fact, I like the way one person put it to me. They said, "If you don't fly first class, your children will."
Boy, so true.
Isn't that true? And we all want what's best for the kids. It's not like I want to spend it all so my kids don't have anything, but you do also need to enjoy yourself while you still have time. Your kids will have more time and opportunity, and so you need to take your time and opportunity. So I like that. Now we're talking about. You said you wanted to talk a little bit about the 2024 elections.
Unfortunately, Tony, I do, and hopefully we'll don't take off, don't turn off the radio.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
We mentioned that nasty word, but we are in a major political presidential
Yeah.
election year, and I came across several different resources, Tony, and articles that really support what I've been hearing for the last 10, 15 years from our money managers and from other experts in our industry about the worries, the concerns. I was just in Nashville and had the pleasure here about a month ago of spending some time with you in Nashville, but also we had the opportunity to spend time with our money managers and a few of their analysts as well. And we had this discussion then. We have it numerous times a month, actually, where they basically showed that statistics, the political year that we're having, and the stock market normally do pretty good overall. And we're going to share some statistics on that. But also, here's the biggest takeaway and advice they gave us, Tony. And I don't know if you're in that session or not. And this is probably the third time I've heard this from our money managers and from a lot of the analysts from Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, BMO that are on TV every single day. Here's the advice they gave us for advisors, number one. Then they said, when you're done and you go home, you share this with your clients. You remember what that advice was?
I don't.
All right, advisors, turn off your TV.
Oh, yeah, yeah, turn off the
Stop
TV.
getting caught up in the negativity, the gloom and doom. The world's coming to an
The
end.
sky is gonna fall. Yeah, if you listen to it's so funny, and my wife and I like to do this. If no matter what side of the political aisle you're on, if you flip between, like, I'm just using example, Fox and MSNBC, you've got your
Right.
right-wing outlet and your left-wing outlet, and you see the right-wing far right pundit and a far left pundit, and read the chyrons and stuff, and it's so funny because the sky is, if their guy gets in, it's done. We're done.
You're right.
It's over. Yeah. And then the other side saying the same thing. And I'm not saying one side might not be more right than the other,
Right.
but you cannot, the media is going to lead with, the glass is always going to be half empty with the headlines, right?
That's right, and that when what they went on to say that, that's what makes the media stations so much money. It's painting
Yes.
that fear, that
That's
gloom
what
and doom,
sells.
and that's what sells. And so, should you be concerned? Our philosophy has never changed. We're hoping for the best. However, we're planning and preparing for the worst. So, if the
Yes.
best happens and the market continues to increase, that's great. You're going to do good. We're going to do good. However, what if the market takes a dive and goes the opposite direction? We're preparing our clients for that as
Yep.
well.
Plan for the best, prepare for the worst, as you always say. And it's funny, we were talking about how the media always goes negative, or the sky is falling, doom and gloom. And
Right.
you know who wrote a great song about that with wonderful lyrics is Don Henley of the Eagle. He had
That's right.
Dirty Laundry. They make their
Dirty.
living on the evening news giving us dirty laundry. That's right. It's
You
always
know, that's funny you mentioned that. My wife and I over dinner last night, we were talking about some of the best bands, that we grew up with, and the Eagles, of course, is number
Oh,
one.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can't make it up. Don Henley and the Eagles, Joe Walsh, love those guys. But, back to our topic,
Yes,
and, I know that, it's timely, and November causes people to worry what's gonna happen if so and so gets in, or what's gonna happen if so and so gets
right.
in. What's gonna happen to my money that's in the market? And people get emotional, and I think, that's the issue, right? Um so you're saying, are you saying not only investors should not be worried about the election, they might even be excited by it because over the years, the stats really show that elections, there's bumps. Somebody
Right,
sneezes in China and our market drops by 20%.
right.
But then the next day, it's just like this past week, we hit a record high on the S&P, right?
That's
First
right,
time ever the S&P 500 was over 5,000, right?
right.
And then the next day, there was news that night or in the morning that inflation numbers weren't as quite as good. They weren't quite as good. It didn't drop as much as they'd hoped. So the market had a sell off.
Right.
From one day to the next, but overall, elections come and go. But the market, if you look over the 100 years, has steadily gone up, right?
That's right, especially from 1928. The some of the worries what we're talking about today is an article I read from Investopedia. Basically, investors' election year worries could be overblown, experts say, and that's kind of what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
There's a nationwide survey, Tony, that found 68% of Republican investors think the election outcome will have an immediate and direct impact on their finances, while only
Wow.
57% of Democratic investors think it will. And here's what's interesting. We talked about in Nashville, and we talk about on a regular basis with our investment team, our money managers, is historically, if you look at the stock market in general and go back to every presidential election year, the last 50 to 100 years, overall, the majority of the time, Tony, the markets have turned out positive returns,
Yeah.
regardless of who got elected.
Yeah. So basically what you're saying is, don't panic, right?
Don't panic. And S&P 500 has shown positive returns in 20 of the past 24 elections going
Wow.
back to 1928, almost
Wow.
100 years. And
Wow.
so, is there any guarantees that that will happen this year?
No,
No.
nobody has a crystal ball. And, they always say past results are not necessarily indicative of future results. However, you have to look at history, and history would show, there's been a few down years, but there's been more up years. So we should not only worry, but maybe be optimistic.
Yes, and as pessimistic as most Americans are today, and I catch myself, getting caught up,
Oh,
with
sure.
business news and what's going on in the world, and just all
It's
the
hard not to because there is a
it
lot
is.
of negative out there.
But overall, I am optimistic over the next 5 to 7 years. And the forecast that we've been receiving by the majority of our managers, analysts, experts is very positive between now and the year 2030. And this just makes me think, Tony, as we're talking about the stock market, presidential election years, maybe the worries, the concerns about your money, especially if you're retired. You know, One thing is different about being retired or being close to retirement is you can't afford to lose half of your portfolio because you're no
Right.
longer working. However, we talked about this a couple shows ago, risk tolerance. And that's one thing I just want to include in here is whether you're retired or pre-retiree or 25 years old, your situation is going to be different than others. So make sure you're working and visiting with a financial service professional that takes risk very seriously and prepares, for the good and the bad if the bad does happen.
Right. And Brad, I want to take a moment here to let our listeners know that, if you have election anxiety or anxiety about your finances, that is a good reason to work with a financial services professional like Brad. Brad, I know you and your team there at Cooper Financial have helped you do a lot for your clients and people you meet with. And our listeners can set up a no charge, no obligation consultation so they can see what it would take to get a financial plan in place or get a second opinion on their current plan. All they have to do is pick up the phone and give you a call at 520-543-8345. And I'll give that number again, 520-543-8345. Also, you have an amazing website, so I want to mention it. There's a lot of great. You
Right.
can see a video of Brad, Mr. GQ here himself.
Oh,
There's a lot of great instructional videos and content, and there's a contact form there. If you don't have time to write the phone down or you're driving, the phone number, it is financialarmorshow.com. Just go to financialarmorshow.com. There will be a link to the main page. You'll see the current show, past shows you can listen to, where to subscribe to the show as a podcast, the YouTube channel link, and a contact form. And if you fill out that form, somebody will get right back to you. And if you mention the radio show, make sure you mention you heard about it on the radio show or podcast or saw us on YouTube, and we'll set up that complimentary consultation for you.
that's great. Well, thank you, Tony. And one thing I want to add too, we're starting to do a few speaking engagements on a monthly basis now.
Oh,
That's
great.
just one thing that our team enjoys doing. It's just, talking to a group of maybe 25, 30, 40 people at one time. So if you call our office and you're interested in coming to one of our local events at no cost, just to get more of an education, an overview, and maybe a nice meal at the same time, let our office know that you heard us on the radio, and you will be a personal invitee, Brad Cooper and Cooper Financial, and we would love to have you. But thanks,
Excellent.
Tony, for that. The next thing on the list is pretty positive. Average returns
Okay.
during those election years. We've been talking about major presidential election years.
Sure.
What's the average returns been? 11.58% has been the average, which is a little bit higher than the S&P 500 during those major
Yeah.
political years. That's amazing.
That is amazing. So, yeah, I mean, if history is any indication, probably don't panic, right? And regardless, if you have a solid plan in place and work with somebody like yourself, there's no reason to be worried here. But these stats are very encouraging. I really think that's great. Obviously, investors out there need to realize that those types of returns are huge, and you've got to not have that election anxiety when it comes to your finances. It leads to emotional decisions, and don't make any decisions, especially during a year like this, without talking to somebody like yourself, a financial professional, right?
That's right, and that's what really keeps me going every day, Tony. I had this conversation about a hour and a half meeting the other day, and it was so enjoyable because as we're having this discussion about the political year, the fears, the concerns, this couple that I met, they lost a lot of money in '08
Hmm.
from the last stock market correction. They're scared. Now they're in retirement. And I was talking about our holistic financial approach, how we take the investment recommendations that we make with their risk tolerance involved. Here's what I found to be so true, Tony. Their definition of risk, what they share with me, a lot of times does not match the definition of risk that their investment firm has given them. Good example, as we were analyzing their portfolio, we found that they had a very aggressive portfolio when it comes to risk.
Hmm.
That if you would look back to the last couple crashes that we've had, it would have dropped over 50%. But when we gave them a risk test, visited with them to identify how much risk they really want to take, it was on the other side. So I want to share that with you because as you're, thinking about your investment portfolio, and if you come to us for a second opinion, we're going to analyze that with our team, and we're going to let you know if your portfolio matches the definition of risk that you give us and the risk you really want to take.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what's important, Brad. I'm glad you brought that up. And again, it reminds me of that British expression, "steady on," right? Steady
That's right.
on. Yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
and especially when it comes to our finances, we should stay steady on and not get distracted by what history suggests isn't going to matter much.
Absolutely. Another article I came across, Tony, a nationwide article, nearly half of investors believe the 2024 election will have a bigger impact on portfolios than market performance. There's been joint studies done between Nationwide Retirement Institute and Advisor Authority that found that 45% of investors think the outcome of November's election will have a larger impact on their retirement goals and portfolio than market performance. But here's something interesting: 32% of investors said they think the economy will tank within 12 months after this year's election. Sound familiar?
Wow, yeah, it sounds very familiar. Yeah, yeah. Wonder where they heard that.
That's right.
A
And
lot of the
it goes
pundits.
it's fed by the pundits and media. That's another reason why they were kidding around, but they weren't. They were very
Right.
serious when they
Yeah.
told us advisors, turn off the TV, have your clients turn off the TV. Now keep
Yes.
up. Now it's impossible in today's world of technology and cell phones to keep away from all that.
Yep.
Most of my updates come from my clients, but we're updated daily on the business news. But
Sure.
don't get sucked into hours and hours of watching the news, and because most of it's, what's the saying, if you hear one side of the story, there's another side of the story, and then the truth is usually in the middle.
Yeah. 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 There's this side and there's that side, and then there's the truth, which is somewhere in the
Boy,
middle.
so true, and that
Isn't it?
applies.
It is so true. Yeah.
But also going on with this study as well, Tony, 31% think if the party they don't support wins in November, their future financial performance will be negative overall, and they're concerned. So,
Yeah.
but just to step back and talk a little bit about that, of course, the markets may not be impacted a whole lot, but overall, if you step back and look at the overall picture, some parties, some presidential candidates overall may be a better fit for the overall policies and
Sure.
values
Oh,
of our
sure.
country
Yeah.
versus the other. So there's much more to look at, but nonetheless, as we're in the year 2024, we're living in different times than we did 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously things like taxes play a part in it, inflation. I mean, it's really amazing. It's interesting, as you talked about, that the data makes it clear that the fears are somewhat, at least, overblown. But again, it's human nature, and like you just said, it is possible for if one party gets in, administration might have. A more a harder line agenda that could affect different areas of our economy in different ways. So, not to say there aren't negatives and positives depending on
Right.
who gets in, but if you're worried about your money going bye bye because one person gets in over the other, that's not necessarily the case, at least with the market and other things, especially if you're working with a financial professional who helps you, again, you mentioned risk, hedge against risk.
Right. And that's what I love about all the meetings that I attend and being around some of the smartest people in the United States: money
Yeah.
managers, insurance professionals, CPAs, attorneys. And I'm really, optimistic. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm excited for the next 5 to 7 years because overall, what we're hearing from our end, Tony, from the people that are on Wall Street, the people that are, studying this daily, 50, 60, 70 hours a week, there's a lot more positive when it comes to the markets and corporation profits. And wow, inflation just, what, about a year and a half ago was around 9%. It's down to 3%, a little over 3. So there's so many positive things going on. So don't miss out on that. But again, work with a fiduciary, work with a financial service professional that's going to dig deep into risk in that
Yeah.
topic. And not only market risk, but like you mentioned, Tony, there's other risk that will destroy your retirement in the future if you're not careful. And that could be future taxation,
Yeah.
unexpected healthcare expenses, a lot of what we talked about.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's so important, Brad, for people to understand. And, especially when you bring in inflation costs, healthcare costs, and taxes, really three of the biggest costs that a
Right.
lot of our, retirees out there concern themselves with or need to be concerned with. And that's all part of your planning process, isn't it, for your clients?
Yes. And that's what's enjoyable. We're covering every potential retirement risk that you most likely will face as a retiree, either
Yeah.
you or your spouse if you're married. And we have the best of the best experts, in my opinion, in different areas that you will need. And they understand holistic financial planning. So pay close attention to that would be my advice, because if you don't address every, which I call every financial puzzle piece, and don't have your puzzle complete, that could be detrimental to your retirement plan.
Yeah. Yeah, it really can. Well, and I think the show's been a good one. We're almost out of time though. It just flew by.
Wow.
We've had a great discussion though. Before we go, let our listeners know how they can get a hold of you and again what you're going to offer them.
Yes, if you want a second opinion, and what's the saying? Never get a second opinion by the person who gave you your advice at the beginning,
The
but
first, yeah.
the first. But if you want just a second opinion, someone just to take a look at what you have, call our office. We'll do that at no cost, and we'll have our team look at that and let you know if you're on track, if your definition of risk matches your portfolio's risk. You can reach us at 520-543-8345. Again, that's 520-543-8345. Or you can visit our website, which is financialarmorshow.com. Again, that's financialarmorshow.com. Mention this radio show, and number one, we'll give you a free consultation as always, and we do with everyone. But also, more importantly, if you want to attend an educational event and really dig a little bit deeper and get more information, let our office know, and you'll have a personal invite from Brad Cooper.
All right. Well, thank you, Brad. And listeners, thanks for tuning in or viewing. That does it for today's episode of the Financial Armor Show with our host, Brad Cooper.
Thank you, Tony.